document something you've done today, tell people what you're doing, how you're doing it, deliver some value. 10 years worth of digital transformation in 3 months' time. Video is the king of content. Video now is the #1 form of media used in content strategy. A customer from being cold to the warm zone. It could be for sales videos in an email. There are all kinds of different applications for video content you create. Fear of the tech, fear of being judged, because that again is putting a lot of pressure on yourself to perform, and you don't need to do that. Give all this stuff away for free. I get that question a lot too.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to System 1357, and today we've got a pretty special presentation from Mr. Rob Deptford, all the way from Canada. Has flown out to Australia.
Oh, maybe one day. Yeah. Unfortunately, not right now, but we'll plan for that, shall we?
Now, Rob, I can't remember how long you and I have known each other, but somehow video ties into it because that's the topic of today, right? And I think when I first contacted you, Rob, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you'd already had like a long history in broadcasting and video and so on, and I might have just been starting to go on camera. So
yeah, well, you came a long way in a short period of time.
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't seem so short to me, but one thing that always impressed me, because Rob's going to be sharing with us today about really about video skills, because these days, I mean, especially these days since the pandemic last year, people who never, ever went on a Zoom call are now doing it. That's their bread and butter, right? And then the next step is that's leading into recording videos, and that could be used for courses or for a YouTube channel or for other things. And so what we're really doing is going to explore a bit around confidence on video. And one thing that really particularly annoys me about Rob Deptford, okay, is that I will watch, hi there, Linda, I will watch a video of his that goes for like 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes or 4 minutes, whatever. And I feel like, how did he pack in so much stuff into the most relaxed fireside chat kind of video? And you feel like you've watched a full documentary or a full feature film, and you just think, how did he do that? How did he keep my attention the whole time? Looked completely at home. And yeah, so I want to find out what your magic is, especially for business, because most of us don't want to go on video. So Rob Deptford, take it away. We're delighted to have you here.
All right, so let's jump right into it. What I wanted to accomplish here really in terms of an objective for people watching is leave today feeling like you're confident enough to start creating some video content if you're not doing it already. And there's some different reasons people aren't doing it, and I understand that, but I hope to sort of convey that this really is valuable for people in businesses, especially for the small entrepreneurs like a lot of us are on the call here. And particularly now, as you talked about, Anthony, having the pandemic really shifting things in the world. We went through early on when COVID-19 started. I read some research that talked about something called Martek's law, and we're all familiar, I think, with Moore's law, where really it's about technology growing exponentially. But Martek's law takes that and adds in the fact that corporations or organizations rather also grow logarithmically alongside technology growing exponentially. So they're not able to keep up with that technology. But at the beginning of the pandemic, somehow we had 10 years worth of digital transformation in 3 months' time. So when people have to make the change, they'll do it. And so before this, I was saying, you got to get on video, you've got to increase your digital footprint, you've got to be doing these things online because your customers are moving there anyway, and they were. Well, now all of a sudden they're going there in droves, and really video is the king of content. And the reason for that, there are multiple reasons for that, but the main one really is it now we can relate to it as the closest thing to in-person contact as possible in the digital space. And we all know that now because of Zoom calls like the one we're doing here for this session. So to create video content, there is some very clear return on investment, I think, for people now in terms of that one-to-one opportunity, that the opportunity to show your face, for people to hear your voice, for customers to experience you in the digital space where they may not necessarily have had the opportunity to do that in person in a physical location. So that's the big one. There's a couple of things I'll share with you quickly here. I know I don't want to get into too many slides. I've got just a couple here that I'll share. So the stats are, you can look up video marketing stats. If you look up video marketing stats for 2021, there's 50 or 60 you'll see right away for sure. These are some of the big ones that stand out for me. So 93% of brands got a new customer because of video on social media. 84% say they've been convinced to buy a product or a service by watching a brand's video. And video now is the number one form of media used in content strategy and is now bigger than blogs and infographics. So that's a big one too. So video, as I say, is the king of content. And this, as it relates to System 1357, everybody's going to be well aware that if they've gone through that program, Scotty talks about cold, warm, and hot zones. And this is the big advantage of video content, particularly in the social media space. And what it really gives you is the opportunity to take a customer from being cold to the warm zone. And you can do that by consistently creating content, showing up in people's feeds, so people have the opportunity, again, to get to see and to get to know you and hear you a little bit and trust you. Where, in the old days, we'd pick up the phone and do a cold call or something like that. Or now, even on LinkedIn, we get cold DMs, right? Strangers send a message and say, hey, I know we don't know each other, but please book a call with me or buy my stuff, or something very direct, right? And it comes from a stranger. So it's not particularly effective. But if we have a chance to build a relationship with people over time in that social media space, eventually that content creation can lead to conversations in the DMs or offline somewhere else with a more trusted connection. So this really is the huge advantage, to move people from the cold zone to the warm zone without really doing much. It's automated as long as you keep creating video content on a consistent basis. So that's pretty big. People are not, I guess people are doing it a little bit more, but there are some common barriers to video content that I think people are starting to really think through a little bit more, because they can see the return on investment now. But certainly in a business environment, the most common barriers that I would hear from people is, A, it's too expensive. Right? They think they have to go out and buy all this equipment and editing software and all of that stuff. And yeah, you can do that eventually if you really want to get into it and get creative, but you certainly don't have to make a big investment to start with. And B, it's the time. And like any new skill, it's going to take time to learn, and it's going to take time to practice and actually get to a point where you feel comfortable and confident enough to create something that you feel is not only acceptable to you, but also reflective of the brand of your business. So I understand that. But as I say, those things are becoming less of a barrier now, because people are realizing that there is a return on that investment. So time and money are the excuse, but really the reason behind that is, I don't understand the ROI. But now that's starting to change. And so we're starting to see people convert and start to create video content, not only for social media, but as you said earlier, Anthony, it could be for things like online courses like we're doing here. It could be for sales videos in an email. It could be, there are all kinds of different applications for video content you create. So those are the two kind of business reasons that have been barriers for people. A couple of personal reasons, though, and this is something that that comes up fairly often. I've had lots of discussions about this one-to-one with clients over the years. Two most common personal reasons really are fear of the tech, because if they think they have to go out and buy all of this equipment, then there's a learning curve for that, right? But really, when we get into it, we know we can start with a smartphone these days, and so there's not really much tech to learn. So fear of the tech. And the other big fear personally is fear of being judged, right? Somebody else, having a bad idea about what it is you're trying to do, I guess, and maybe being not so nice about it. So, and yes, that happens. I mean, we see the trolls online once in a while. We all get them, I think, once in a while, and so we have to work our way through that. But really, there are some simple ways to get past that. So when I talk about what is the success formula for creating video content more broadly, there's three pillars of success. And so it's confidence, it's competence, and it's content strategy. And so the confidence piece is getting past that, in a personal sense, getting past that fear of being judged. The competence piece is getting to know the tech a little bit, but not so much that you're capable of going to be a Hollywood producer. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to do enough to create something that's going to work for you in terms of your basic business needs. And the content strategy, well, that's what do I say and why do I say it, right? And that's what we'll get into next in a little bit here. But that tends to be something that people sort of get a bit of a mental block on, is if I'm going to create content, that's great. And if I'm going to do it consistently, that's great. It sounds great. But how am I going to come up with all of those ideas to be able to create videos on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or a daily basis or whatever it is you decide to do? And we do see people, all of us know, if you spend any time on LinkedIn or Facebook or other platforms, we see people who sometimes show up daily. And what I tell people about that is, don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Just pick an interval. If it's monthly to start with, that's terrific. But the big names that are showing up daily, for the most part, those are people that have been doing it for a while and they're well established, and they have teams of people behind them actually doing their video production work and probably managing their social media too. So don't put that kind of pressure on yourself as you're just getting started. So competence, confidence, confidence first, really, competence and content strategy. Now, the competence piece, when I talk about getting started with your smartphone, the secret to that is, I mean, these things are not complicated, right? Whether you have an iPhone or mine's a Samsung, they're really very intuitive these days. And so to find your camera app and just press the record button is not that hard. But if you're like me, from a certain generation, often what happens is we pick up a new device or some new piece of technology and we're afraid to press the button, right? Like that red button might blow something up or it could damage something. And so we don't experiment with the technology for fear of getting ourselves so far into a hole that we can't dig ourselves back out again with whatever might happen with what we do. And so, the lesson here in terms of learning the technology is, you can learn a lot from YouTube these days. So go to YouTube and just look things up. And Anthony knows all about this stuff because his channel is all about some of the tech things we run into. And he's talked a lot about, exactly. He's talked a lot about even the business case for YouTube, right? And so I would encourage people to go back and watch his session that he did here about that, because there's a good business case for YouTube for sure. But also, just you have to have sort of the mind of a child when you get these things, right? Like when I watch my kids with the TV remote or some new device that comes into the house, the first thing they're doing is pressing all the buttons to see what happens, and nothing ever does explode. So we can take a bit of a lesson from that. And experiment a little bit with just pressing the red record button and seeing what happens. And you're not going to get anything perfect right away, for sure. But so what? The whole point is that you did something to take a step towards getting started. And that's exactly what we want people to do. Okay. I'm watching the clock and hoping that we have time to get through all of this. And I think we're going to be fine. So set yourself up for success.
So we're about 15 minutes into it. So we're doing okay.
Perfect.
It's great, by the way, Rob. It's wonderful. And I've got a ton of questions. So
Awesome. Awesome. So set yourself up for success and really just don't worry about what other people might think. I know that's easier said than done sometimes. But you can really you can practice shooting a few videos on your smartphone. Just do it in your own private space, review it yourself. When you get a little bit more comfortable, share it with a close friend or a family member maybe and get a little bit of a critique from them. And then move on from there until you're ready to actually publish. But don't set out to create your first video and think, oh, I got to publish this right away. Because that again is putting a lot of pressure on yourself to perform, and you don't need to do that. We're not creating Hollywood movies or anything like that here. We're just trying to get you started in shooting some video. So what do you say? This is what comes next, right? When you finally get the courage to press that red button and the camera comes on and now what? What do I say? And this really isn't that complicated either. When you look at video content, there certainly is a wide variety out there. And if you and it's all for different reasons, to be quite honest. If anybody saw the little promo I did on LinkedIn for this course, this session, the video I stopped on was some random video of a lady who was pole vaulting, and it was meant to be inspirational and things. And you see a lot of that where people are posting other video content from other places. And the strategy there is it's called scraping. They're taking video from some other place, and often it's video that has gone viral and done very well. And they're copying that and putting it in their own feed and trying to see if they can generate a lot of views and maybe build an audience that way. Which I think it works to some extent, but I would just be mindful of, again, is that reflective of my brand, and is this really what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of my business purpose on social media? But for the most part, people are showing up on camera and they're delivering some kind of message. Might be inspirational, but it might not be. It might just be some random thing that happened during the day. The key really is you're not going to see any of those videos that truly look like a commercial. And that really is what we're after. So there are some things that you can do. You can document what you're doing, right? What you're doing and how you do it. You could announce an event, which, like I did for this session, I made a little promo video for that. You could review a product. You could compare products. You could respond to comments and create a new video responding to comments. There are all kinds of directions you could go, really. And the idea is to use that content to, as we said off the top, start to establish some continuity, some consistency, some know, like, and trust factor, building those relationships as you build your audience. I call it the 6 o'clock news anchor effect sometimes. This is something I go back to from my journalism background, where, growing up for me, the television was the only screen in the house. And my dad watched the very same newscast at 6 o'clock every night. It was like clockwork. And we got to know the guy who delivered the newscast. His name was Tony Parsons. And he was in our living room every night. So we, over time, got to know, like, and trust him. And we kept going back to him. So this is it's the 6 o'clock news anchor effect. So this is what we're trying to accomplish in terms of our business purpose with the consistency of video content on social media, is keep showing up like that, whether it's, again, monthly, weekly, daily, whatever you're able to do. It's that consistency that matters more so than the frequency. And then you're in people's living room, or you're on their phone, or wherever it is they're consuming your content, and you have that opportunity to build that trust factor with your audience. So That's what's going to move you from the cold zone to the warm zone, right? And keep people in the warm zone, and maybe eventually move them to the hot zone so you can make some sales, which is great. And then, as Anthony has talked about too, the other really great business opportunity in terms of creating that content is if you can create some stuff that's evergreen on YouTube. You can actually begin to generate revenue from YouTube through sponsorships and ads and affiliate links and things like that. You can turn your video content into a larger course of some kind that you could package and sell. There's all kinds of creative things you could do to repurpose the content that you create. So this goes back to the ROI, right? When you're thinking about the time it takes to create the video, yes, it does take time, and you have to do a bit of planning. And if you get into the creative editing and things, yes, that takes time to learn, and it takes time to go through the creative process to build a really well composed video with speaking and images and maybe background audio or music and other things that you could do. That does take time, but once you do it, if it's distributed in a place where it's going to be evergreen, it's there for a long time and can serve you in multiple different ways. So let's not put the cart before the horse, though. Let's get back to just what's simple, right? The smartphone, press the red button, and just come up with something you've done today, right? Document something you've done today. Tell people what you're doing, how you're doing it. Deliver some value, and that is the bottom line. If you can deliver some value to your target audience with whatever it is you're delivering in terms of your message, those people are going to keep coming back to you. They're going to keep looking for your content, and they're going to be looking for that. And you're going to say, well, why would I give all this stuff away for free? I get that question a lot too. Well, you're giving it away for free because that's what you need to do to start building your audience and build that trust factor. And the stuff they're going to pay for after is going to be your higher level knowledge, or maybe your attention to their specific circumstances. And so there is a bit of a funnel, so to speak, at play for sure. But you do have to give that value up front. How are we doing? 22 minutes, I think.
We're doing great. We've got a couple of questions coming in too, but we'll open them up when you're ready, Rob.
Well, let me see here. I could go on and on and on, but I want to make sure we've got time for questions. So why don't we jump into that?
Okay, so the first one is from a young man called Scotty Schindler, which is, can you repeat the stats that you started with, because they blew him away. So you gave us some statistics early on. If you want to share your screen again.
Yeah, I can go back to that here.
Just step through those a bit.
Yeah, this is it here. So yeah, 93. Can everyone see that?
No, if you can share your screen.
Oh, let's see here. Where's my screen share? There we go. Thought I had clicked that. Yeah, so this is just a handful of stats, but yeah, 93% of brands got a new customer because of a video on social media.
Wow.
That's tremendous, right? That's really significant. 84%.
Just on that first one, when I see that, I'm only thinking of B2C brands. I'm only thinking of people buying something from home. I'm not thinking of it for the service businesses, but it just says 93% of brands.
Yeah.
You go on?
Yeah, absolutely. I know this applies to all kinds of different businesses for sure. 84% of people say that they've been convinced to buy a product or service by watching a brand's video. So again, 84% is tremendous. That's really significant.
Yeah.
And video now is the number one form of media used in content strategy, which I think makes sense, right? It's easily consumable, especially with most people on mobile devices these days. Yeah. So you're not going to sit down and read a blog necessarily in the same way you'd consume a video where you could be on the move and just listening to the message.
That's great. Rob, thanks for sharing your screen and thanks for sharing those stats. Now, there's a couple of other questions. Or a comment came in from Paul that not every video needs to be published. That if you just get it one across the line, like if you record a video and then you don't die.
Yes.
And you don't break the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
then like even if it doesn't go up, and yeah, I certainly recommend that for people with YouTube, that they post a few videos and don't make them public. So it's just the only person who can see them is themselves, and then you can switch it to unlisted, which means whoever you share the link with, they're the only ones who can see it.
Yeah,
So
and Paul knows. Paul and I worked together a couple of years ago, and
yeah,
his videos are impressive, aren't they? And so he can speak from experience for sure.
right. Now, and another good question is evergreen, and I wonder whether you could explain what does evergreen content mean and compare that to social media.
Yeah, so evergreen content is something that lasts forever, let's say, or has a long shelf life. Whereas in some cases on social media, especially LinkedIn, if you're just posting a video or any type of content in the feed, after a day or two, it'll get some initial activity, but it tends to disappear after a while, and it's not easily searchable either on LinkedIn.
Mm.
It's a little different on some other platforms, but YouTube, for example, is a good example of a more evergreen type of platform where once you post the video, it's there, it stays there until you take it down, or until something happens at YouTube and there's some vast change that happens at YouTube, but it's there until you take it down otherwise. And so people
Yeah.
can keep going back to it, and they can also find it in search.
Yeah, so that's really, really important because the social media can be like such a hamster wheel. You've just got to be posting all the time, and if you don't like, but I've got a video on YouTube that's a year old. It goes for like 90 seconds, and it's uh, like it's got very poor lighting. It's got ums and ahs, like not properly edited, and even at the end of the video, I've still got in the video itself me forgetting to, like, you can watch me turning off. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now, and you can see like 10 seconds of me doing that. But that's had 180,000 views. It's what gets watched like 1,000 times a day, and not because it's a brilliant video, but because YouTube itself is serving that as evergreen content until something else pushes me off my perch.
Well, and because it's the kind of video the average person would make, right? The average person, again, is not a Hollywood producer. They're just going to
Yeah,
pick up their smartphone and record something. And so it's relatable, and that is really important.
yeah. So yeah, I really had to study to put in all of those ums and ahs. So it took a lot of practice, because I'm just such a natural. Now, there's a good question too about subtitles. Should you always add subtitles to your videos?
Not always, not always. I think there's a time and a place for them. Now, there's a stat that I've seen about Facebook in particular, suggesting that more than 80% of video is watched on silent on Facebook. And in that case, absolutely, having subtitles or captions would definitely be of benefit. I haven't seen any information specific to any other platforms, but I know YouTube will automatically add those captions if you've got that set up.
Yeah.
And especially on mobile devices, right? If you're just sort of scrolling through and you stop on a video and it automatically plays and the captions come up, that can definitely be helpful in catching people's attention and having them stick on to watch. So
Yeah.
I would do it for Facebook, for YouTube. Again, YouTube, it's automatic if you set it up. But I wouldn't do it if you're creating a sales video or a course or something like that. I wouldn't necessarily put captions on those.
Yeah. And so yeah, so it just depends on the use case. And in that one, I suppose you'd say that let's get the video up first, okay? And
Yeah.
it's going to look awful. You're going to hate it. You're never going to enjoy watching yourself. But it's just getting it up there and just remove any friction that you can. If you think, well, I'll do it without the proper editing and I'll do it without the captions, and it's okay.
Yeah. It's
So
okay.
yeah, that's right. Because you're not going to win an Oscar. All right.
No, the nominations just came out and I wasn't nominated. So
Yeah, well, mine hasn't arrived either, and it might be because the borders are closed. But yeah, I'm very disappointed. So if you record on a smartphone, do you record it landscape or portrait?
well,
Landscape.
Yeah, landscape or vertical, right? Vertical or
Or,
landscape or
yeah,
yeah. So it depends on the platform.
right.
But for the most part, I would record landscape for sure, because you're going to get a widescreen in most cases. But there are platforms specific to vertical video. So on Instagram, the IGTV feature works best with vertical video.
Right.
YouTube has its Shorts feature now, which is specific to vertical video.
Yeah.
So you know you can still use both for most platforms, but there are those few platforms that are made specific for vertical video. So just be mindful of that, and be mindful of where your camera is located on your phone, so you're looking at that and not looking
Mm.
off in the distance someplace.
Or looking at yourself, looking at you,
Right.
talking to you, looking at yourself on the camera instead of, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's,
exactly.
yeah, but yeah, I think they're also, for many of these things, they've just got such short, easy videos that you can just record and post without any editing. And so once again, it's removing the friction, removing, and sometimes people will see you sipping a coffee or doing something, and they'll notice that, and they'll feel you're much more relatable. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Paul, thank
Coffee,
you,
glass of
Paul.
water.
So Paul needs to go, but that's great to have you here, Paul. And I'll be mentioning him
Thanks,
in a
Paul.
minute for, yeah, for a future event that's coming up. So yeah, no, this is good. I've got some questions as well, which is it easier to record with somebody or to record on your own? Like, is it easier to record a conversation like this, a dialogue, or to stand there and record on your own with nobody else? Which one's easier in terms of confidence?
Well, everybody's going to have a different comfort level,
Yeah,
but having a conversation over Zoom like this is definitely one way to do it, because we do it anyway, right? We'd pick up the phone and have a telephone conversation,
sure.
and we have conversations over video on Zoom quite commonly now, just since the pandemic, right? So there is a comfort zone factor for sure, and so to just hit the record button as you're having a casual conversation, you never know. Odds are something interesting could come up in that conversation that you could cut out and make into a nice little video. So
Remember the time, Rob, you and I were speaking a couple of years ago, and one of us was being brilliant. I can't remember. It was probably me. No, I've got no
probably was.
idea. and one of us and the other one said we should have recorded this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have
Well,
recorded this. Yeah,
yeah, I've had lots of conversations like that where in hindsight it was like, man, that was a brilliant discussion. It's too bad, too bad we didn't have the record button hit at the beginning. But
yeah, because you may
yeah,
not necessarily be clear about how you're going to use, or if you're going to use the video, but you may just use the transcript of it. You may use it for the basis of a social media post, or for a 30-second snippet that you're going to post up on LinkedIn or something else. So yeah, so that's really, yeah, yeah, that's it's interesting seeing the different ways that people are using video as well. Yeah. Um,
yeah,
and and yeah, like, I mean, a year ago or a bit more than a year ago, you were trying to tell people you've got to do video, and they were all saying I can't do video, and now they're telling you that on Zoom, and they're saying I can't do video, so you just did it.
you just did it. Yeah, you just did it. We all had to, right? So back to that the Martech's law principle that I talked about off the top. Well, all of a sudden we had to make a change. So it didn't matter if you were a small business or a solopreneur or a large company. Circumstances dictated that even though it was challenging to turn the ship, because there was cost involved and risk involved,
Mm.
all of a sudden circumstances dictate that, okay, we've got to do something. And lo and behold, you get into it, and hey, it's not all that bad. I can sit here in shorts and just dress up on top, and it works out quite well, right?
Is that what you do? So yeah, I mean, yeah, really, really fascinating, seeing, as I say, the various ways that people are are using video and then repurposing it. So, for example, with a blog, you might actually record a short, write your blog post and then record a video and then link the video to your blog and then link the blog, in the description for your video or something like that. Yeah, just to kind of
Yeah,
help each other. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
yeah,
Repurpose, right? And I've seen people that have, with transcripts from videos over a period of time, they'll turn that into a book,
yeah,
publish it on Amazon.
yeah.
So there are all kinds of options.
So I've got another question. Imagine if you're in the if you don't want to go on camera at all, but you want to explain things, and it could be around food, around healthy eating, around cooking, around playing guitar. It could be around something else. It could be demonstrating something like with slides. Is that okay, or should you always be on camera? What would you say?
Yeah, you don't have to be on camera. I mean, I
Mhm.
think it depends on your business and what would be most effective for your business, what you're trying to deliver. But you really should take stock of what's going to be the best strategy for you. So, you video may not even be the best strategy for you, although I think there's always a component, an opportunity for a component of it. But if I'm in the food business, for example, I probably am going to want images of what I'm cooking or what I'm,
Yeah,
the design on the plate rather than my face, because my face isn't what's going to sell my food or my
right.
cookbooks or whatever it is I'm in the business of.
Sure.
So I'm probably going to be focused more on those images and looking at a platform like Instagram, for example, where those kinds of things do well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really good. I was trying to speak to a couple of real estate agents yesterday about their video game, and they've got some very, uh, well, I would call them very primitive videos of house tours, which are just photos with a bit of music, and that's it. Nobody walking through or anything, and there's nothing really to show off their expertise as agents, their ability to sell or and I wonder why they don't do that. Or maybe it hasn't occurred to them, or they don't know what to say, or they don't want to go on camera. But I mean, these are real estate agents who may be running an auction, and there might be 40 people there, and and having to deal with difficult negotiations at times. But it just hasn't occurred to them maybe to create like a little 2-minute video or something like that about when's the best time to sell your house or yeah.
Yeah, well, and these are the kinds of opportunities that are constantly presenting themselves now because a lot of businesses just haven't evolved into that space yet.
Yeah.
And as we become more and more digital first, as I call it, we're in the digital first business era, where the traditional stuff still stands. There's a place for that, but we're becoming more focused as sort of communication centric businesses in the online space. You're going to
Mm.
see more businesses taking advantage of these opportunities as the ideas come up, like this one for real estate.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean I remember um I remember in my early days in the workspace where people they had just had voice messages and answering machines just starting out, and people would I remember they would leave a message and they'd say, I hate answering machines, I hate leaving your messages, because they just felt awkward, leaving a message knowing that it was going to be recorded. And now nobody would sort of make that objection now. Well, I suppose we're getting to that stage too, where you can't get away with, oh, well, I hate video. I hate looking at myself on camera. So, well, welcome to the world. You're on camera every time you go down to the shops or drive in traffic. You're going to be on somebody's camera. Just you don't have to look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you may not be aware you're on camera in all cases, but but you're right. You're absolutely right. The cameras are everywhere. And really, when we think about it practically, it's just this little plastic device, right? Like there's nothing to be afraid of, really.
Mm.
It goes back to really, it's the fear of am I going to be judged for how I appear on camera?
Oh, yeah.
It tends to stem from that. So we just have to get past that because if we've got the courage to do it, somebody who isn't doing it doesn't have the right to judge us. And if they do, well, so what? Right? We carry on because we're going to get the benefits and they're not.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this has been just wonderful, Rob, and I'm very encouraged, and I think I've finally got the courage to go on camera now after today.
I hope everybody tries it at least, because I know most people are packing a smartphone in their pocket most of the day these days.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do. So, press the button and tell us what the weather is or something. Just record something and get past that first post, and take it from there. See how it turns out for you.
So I want to thank you again, Rob, and make just let people know about to go to the System 1357 live page, because you can see what's coming up. I'll just post that in the chat here, and that my System 1357 page will tell you a few other events coming up with the on-camera confidence. We've just seen that one today, and then of course there's going to be the replay available for that in the next few days. And then we've got a stress relief primer from Professor Pete Alexander, so that should be pretty good. And then creating your W5 story. So we've got a few things, a few events. So keep your eye on the System 1357 live page, system1357.com/live. And that's got the replays, and also log in and have a look at. We've got a ton of videos, and we're adding not only replays, we've got all of the sales training material in there, all of the courses, and yeah, so we're just delighted to have people take advantage of that amazing resource, the community that we're building. It's just wonderful. Yeah. So Rob, I'm going to ask you, put you on the spot here. Can you give us one or two tips in the last 60 seconds? Okay, you're used to doing this sort of time pressure thing in radio, right?
It's been a few years, but yeah, certainly.
Okay, we've got to fill in some time up until the news. Okay, so the news is happening in 45 seconds. So give us your one or two best tips for those of us who are just starting. Okay, maybe not me, but just starting to get on camera, trying it. What are your one or two killer tips that are going to the takeaways?
So we talked about the idea of just recording something and not sharing it with anybody. I do think that's quite helpful.
Right one.
Something we didn't mention is the concept of writing a script. And I didn't get into that because I don't like to encourage script writing up front, because it can come off as, well, you know how it comes off. People read from the page, and it just doesn't sound natural. But in terms of practicing yourself, keeping in mind that people tend to speak at a rate of about 120 to 150 words per minute.
Okay.
If you're trying to make a 1 or 2 minute video and you know that speaking rate is pretty common, write a short script and practice with that yourself. And if it comes off as robotic, it doesn't matter because you're not sharing it with anybody, but it's going to help you to kind of zero in on what it takes to fill that specific length of time. So, we're filling 45 seconds or whatever it is. And I have no idea how many words I'm saying now, but, but that's a great way to sort of train your brain to understand the concept of speaking to time.
Yeah, that's really good, because I find that one of two things happens. One is that I go rambling if I've just got the recording happening and I don't really. And then the other one is that I'll come up with some new idea and just take the video in a totally different direction. And that might work fine if you're being interviewed on a podcast, but when you've got more of a focus on your video and what it is that you're trying to create and why, it can be quite a distraction. It can take you off your message. So those are great tips, both of them. Thank you, Rob. And and of course the script, it doesn't have to be a script. It could be bullet points or whatever is going to be easier for you. So thank you again, Rob Deptford. How do we get in touch with you? It's
So you can find me on YouTube, you can find me on LinkedIn, and robertdeptford.com is the website.
Deptford.com. So I'm popping that into the chat. And thanks again. The replay will be available for this session, And yeah, once again, check the the System 1357 website, and you'll find the replays and lots of other good stuff. And look forward to seeing everyone on future sessions. Thanks again, Rob. That was great.
Thanks very much.